I'm not used to, that was fun. I'm not used to doing everything. It's like this. Mark chapter 5. And my glasses here. Have any of y'all ever played this little game right here? Pass the pigs. Anybody ever heard of this little game right here? Pass the pigs. I mean, it perfectly fits the theme of tonight. I have a brand new tripod, so we'll have to do something with it different next week because it's kind of blocking, obstructing my view. Little bitty pigs right here. They're like pig dice is what they are. And you roll the pigs and you get certain points when you pass the pigs. And it's a fun little game. This goes all the way back to my youth ministry days. Tonight we're kind of playing, or we're looking at a story that includes pigs. That's the only reason I'm bringing that up. So that's a bonus. So you go to Walmart afterwards and find Pass the Pigs. Yeah, and feel free. Everything's over here. Grab something to drink. There's ice in the ice chest. There's tea. Have Gold Peak because they were out of Milo's when I went to the store the other day. So anyway.
Is this just water?
Yeah, that's water. That's Prattville spring water. Get Prattville spring water. So, all right. And I think you've heard me say this before, but when last spring, when we were in the midst of the Job series, I said, we're used to those three words, ready, set, go. But this has more of a spin, the opposite spin on go, set, ready. And what I meant by that, when we started the Job series, I sort of knew where a few nights were going. We were covering 7 chapters of the book of Job per week. But there were a few weeks I didn't have a clue when we started. And that's not the way I usually roll. I like to have a clue. I like to have everything laid out. And God has just been kind of flipping that order on me, because with this, I knew 2 weeks ago we did the launch, the introduction of Crazy Jesus, and I said a lot of stuff, and because it's like, all right, you have 45 minutes to talk about Jesus, and that's like, what did John say? Said of everything he did and everything he said was written in books. No library could hold all the books. And tonight is kind of one of these evenings where I'm like, I did not see this coming, that we would be looking at Mark chapter 5. The Gadarene demoniac. Matter of fact, it's been 25 years since I've used this passage, or gone into this passage as a text. And I find that surprising, because here is someone in Scripture, the demoniac, the madman living in the land of the Gadarenes, that I have never quite identified with. And I'm like, funny how that is until now. So back in the spring, we dove into Job, and I think Job is the book for the season we're in right now. And what we did in the spring is one of my favorite things that God's ever asked me to do. I think the story of the Gadarene demoniac is a perfect fit for where we are in our culture right now. I know we are facing a mental health crisis in our country. You've heard me say this. The statistics have kind of held constant for the last year that 60% of people who live in America, 60% are experiencing distress. Every time I hear those statistics refreshed, it's held at that. 60% of the people we work with are distressed. And there's 2 types of stress. There's eustress, which is good, normal stress. It's the stress we all experience every day, just, a normal day, a normal work day. But then there's distress. Distress is fight or flight. Distress would be along the post-traumatic stress disorder lines. It's fight or flight. It's the stress where we have tension, where our muscles never seem to relax. It's where laughter comes hard, that deep, hearty laughter, when something just cracks us up. And it says the statistics indicate that 60% of us are going through that right now. So I want you to know I do not take that term crazy lightly. When the Lord gave me that idea, there was a little bit of dissonance within me. And tonight, we're talking about when crazy met crazy. I don't take that term lightly, though. I'm not making light of mental health issues. I'm acknowledging them, perhaps a little more than I ever have before. For example, I have finally decided to own the word depression. I have experienced throughout an entire lifetime the amount of depression that I figure anybody experiences, but most of mine is I've got a resilience within me, and I may be down for 2 or 3 days, but I always bounce back up. But in this season, the last 18 months, there have been times when I've just been depressed. And even if your depression has a link to it as far as a cause, it's still depression. And I've felt that. And I'm like, I'm going to just call this for what it is. It's depression. I didn't realize until not too long ago that a year ago, after 4 days of spiritual warfare, it suddenly hit me. I had a panic attack last year. First one I ever remember having. Didn't even know I had it. And I'm going to mention a television show, and I'm not an advocate for this show as far as you going out and watching it, because this is kind of out of the norm for me to watch a show like this, because the show has a lot of vulgar language, and I'm not waving a flag for that, but I've heard a lot of talk, and actually my son-in-law got me interested in connected me with the show Ted Lasso. It's a comedy, and it's been out for 2 seasons. It's on Apple TV. And what has drawn our culture to Ted Lasso is the character in this comedy that is most like Jesus. He's not 100% like Jesus, because he does some things that are not like Jesus, but he has such a kindness to him in dealing with people. And this show has kind of put the spotlight on mental health. And he hasn't, Ted, the character, without revealing, you're probably not going to all rush out and watch it, and I don't necessarily, I'm not encouraging that, but he has a panic attack. And he's dealing with some issues, and I watched an episode of a television show, and it hit me. I had one of those last year. And there's no need to go into like I say, I was involved in spiritual warfare at the time, 4 straight days of it, and that was kind of the enemy's response. And then, as far as what we're all going through right now, soul trauma, the last 18 months, there are 3 steps to trauma that I'm learning. One is mental fragmentation. Anybody else feeling that right now other than me? That's step number 1. Step number 2 is numbing. You're just numb. I almost had a head-on collision on the way to church about a month ago, and usually when something like that, I saw the other driver and I saw the person sitting in the car. It was that quick, and I just made a split-second decision. But usually when I come out of something like that, my adrenaline's pumping. And I came out of that flat, just like didn't even increase my pulse. And so I think that's an example of numbing, just kind of being numb to things. And the other one is isolation. So I can identify on some level with all 3 of those, but the mental fragmentation especially, I wish somebody explained this to me 10 years ago. Because my thoughts, I'm going through another season, kind of like this season, and my thoughts are like this. I'm just like, and it's a good thing, because I've finally slowed down to the speed of God. But 10 years ago, I was taking Bible verses that I knew really well, and I was looking at that verse of scripture and that thought and things that I knew to be the truth, and I would just turn them slowly, kind of like rehandling it again, kind of repiecing what I knew, not what I had known, it's what I already knew, but just kind of looking at it just very, very slowly, going over familiar scripture passages, just kind of going, And so here we are with crazy Jesus. All these things are going on. Maybe you identify with some of these things that I just mentioned. Tonight's called When Crazy Met Crazy. And here's the extra part of that: when crazy Jesus met broken crazy, or crazy broken. In tonight's account in Mark 5, this is a story that is whimsical, and it is bizarre, and it's tragic, and it's redemptive all at the same time. Kind of going back a couple of weeks ago when we kind of kicked this off, we were in Mark again. We were in Mark that night, we're in Mark tonight. In Mark chapter 3, verse 21, his family thought he was crazy. Matter of fact, scripture says they thought he had lost his mind. So his family thought he was crazy. I didn't know we were going to be in Mark tonight, so let me just kind of pick up with his family thought he was crazy, and then what happened after that? He was accused of being demon-possessed by the spiritual leaders. He was accused of casting out demons in the name of demons, in the name of Satan. That makes no sense whatsoever, and he had a few things to say about that, like the most famous is, can a house divided against itself stand? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to work out, guys, like you think it is. His family came to get him, to take him back home for a much-needed rest. That was their assessment. That was not Jesus's. In Mark chapter 4, he told some incredible stories. You know, he taught in parables, and the whole chapter 4 is filled with parables. And at the end of the day, he and his disciples get in a boat to sail overnight from one end of the Sea of Galilee to the other, from the upper end of the Sea of Galilee down to the lower end, the longest part of that lake, that sea. Verse 1 of chapter 5 says, they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. Now, Jesus knew where he was going. His disciples probably did not. He knew that they were leaving one crowd behind up there in the land of Capernaum, the area of Capernaum, to face an entirely different kind of crowd down in the land of the Gadarenes. The land of the Gadarenes, or Gerasenes. It's where the Hebrew tribe of Gad settled when the 12 tribes were taking their part of the promised land. And the tribe of Gad did not want to go across the Jordan River and enter into the promised land. They liked the land they saw on the left side of Jordan, so that's where they stayed. They didn't accept God's will. They wanted to do their own, and God permitted it for some reason. And that's where Jesus is headed. They're on their way to encounter the Gadarene demoniac. I believe that Jesus is specifically going to see him. As bizarre as this story happens to be, I believe it's simply a rescue mission. It's kind of like Saving Private Ryan. This group of men are going to save one. I think Jesus knows this. They have an overnight sailing trip to take them to the other side, and in the midst they get caught up in a furious storm. It was quite the squall, and this is the account where Jesus is asleep in the bow of the boat. And these fishermen, a lot of the guys, the disciples were fishermen, they were coming unglued. They have spent their life on the sea, and this storm has them frightened. And they have to wake Jesus up. And they say, "Don't you care? We're going to drown." Jesus gets up, and this is where he says, he speaks to the storm, speaks to the waves. "Peace, be still." And Scripture says immediately, storm gone. I can imagine if the moon was out that night, you could have seen it reflected in the water. It just like a parking lot. I want you to listen to that storm they came through. I want you to feel that storm. I want you to taste that storm, smell that storm. Do you smell something familiar there? We're in a storm. And in the Galilee storm, you have a chaotic landscape, a chaotic seascape, but you have a calm mind. A mind so calm, he's asleep at the back of the boat. Calm mind. That's not a crazy mind. He was calm. Jesus spoke calm into the chaos, and he changed the atmosphere. And the disciples, when he did this, I imagine Jesus spoke those words. He goes back to the boat to continue his nap. And it says in Scripture, they looked at one another and said, "Who is this? What manner of man is this that we are following?" Would not have been surprised at all if one of the disciples said, "That was crazy." Whoa. So they come across the lake. It's morning now. It says they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This bundle of demons go out to meet Jesus. And there is a sense here that they knew he was coming. Matter of fact, Matthew's gospel is shorter, but it talks about, what are you doing here so soon? Like, you're not supposed to be here yet. Like, the demons know their days are numbered, but we weren't expecting you, but you have the sense here they knew he was coming. Matthew's gospel talks about there's two demoniacs. Same story. Some people will look at that and say, well, there's a discrepancy. The Bible is contradicting itself, but in Mark's story, which is longer, Mark is focused on one of those two men because of this man's story. It would kind of be like Luke's gospel recording. He records the leper story where the 10 lepers are healed, but it says only one leper came back and thanked Jesus for the healing. It would be kind of like if Luke had chosen to do that, of just focusing on the one who gave thanks. But in that particular, in the telling of that story, Luke had to say, hey, all 10 of them were there because it was the gratitude of the one that juxtaposed the ingratitude of the 9. I don't think they were ungrateful. I just think, I've done that. Haven't you had that happen when God answers a prayer and you're like, woohoo! And you go for 3 or 4 days and you're like, oh, sorry, I forgot to say thank you. I think that's what happened there among the guys. It says a man with an evil spirit. It says evil spirit. In the Greek language, it says a man with an unclean spirit. It seems like he has a single unclean spirit, the way it says it there. But if we go down several verses, we see that he has 1,000 unclean spirits in him. Why or how they have gravitated towards this one individual, we don't know. We can only speculate. How did this person, created in the image of God, wind up where he is? Rich Mullins, the song, we sang one of his songs a few moments ago, he has another song called The Howling, and there's a lyric in that song that says, I can see some traveler's footprints. There's a little bit of blood in every step he made. I wonder what kind of burden he's bearing that has cut him so deeply every step along the long, long way. I think we sometimes forget that that is descriptive of us all. We're carrying some burdens within us. We've been cut by life. Sometimes our wounds are more open. Sometimes they're closed. They've been forgotten, but this is what it's like to live in a broken world. So I don't know how the Gadarene demoniac wound up living in a graveyard long before his body was laid to rest there, but I do know he has a lot of company in our present day. There are a lot of dead men, dead women, walking among us. They're not living, they're merely existing. And I also know this, the mind takes a lot of hits. The mind takes a lot of hits. Now, if you're a believer and a follower of Jesus already, the mind takes, even if you're a believer and a follower of Jesus, the mind takes a lot of hits. Yes, we have the mind of Christ, as Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 2:16. We have that mind. And yes, we put on the helmet of salvation as part of putting on the full armor of God to protect this mind, as we are instructed in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 17. But we're living on a battlefield. It's a glorious, breathtaking battlefield, this earth, surrounded by so much beauty and wonder, but it's a battlefield nonetheless. The mind takes a lot of hits from our enemies. And those hits sometimes come in the guise of evil spirits, evil thoughts. I may not understand evil spirits. I believe in them because Jesus talked about them. And I see the evidence of them as Jesus did what he did here in the next few verses. I may not understand fully evil spirits, but I do understand evil thoughts. It's part of why every day I pray 2 Corinthians 10:5. It says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to the lordship of Christ. And the reason I pray that every day is I want to do that. I don't know, maybe I'm alone, but am I the only one in this room that thinks things that I wish I didn't think? Am I the only one in this room that occasionally wants to smack somebody? Yeah? Or as my seminary professor used to say about working with young people, you want to kill them and tell the Lord they died? I don't know what happened to them. They were young. And so therefore, I have to pray every day, Lord, take these thoughts captive, because I've got some angry thoughts and I don't want to think this way. I've got some arrogant thoughts. I don't want to think this way. I don't want to think this way. Are not the thoughts I'm taking captive to the Lordship of Jesus evil? Yeah, of course they are. I remember the very first C.S. Lewis book I read, Screwtape Letters. And I want to encourage you, if you've not read the book, if you've not read C.S. Lewis, this would be a great place to start, the Screwtape Letters. And in this book, C.S. Lewis creatively writes a story about an older demon named Screwtape. He's the uncle to a young demon, his demon nephew named Wormwood. And he's writing letters of encouragement to this young demon, his young nephew, because Wormwood has been assigned to a new person. And this new person, shortly into the book, becomes a new believer in Jesus. And so Uncle Screwtape is writing his nephew, this is how you can attack even the mind of a Christian. And I believe that the enemy attacks our minds often. He comes at us. He knows where we're vulnerable. I've said this many times. 10 years ago, I made this discovery. The enemy is not omniscient, but he takes very good notes. And he's made book on you. He knows. I think she's vulnerable there. I think this is his blind spot. The mind takes a lot of hits, and sometimes those hits come from our spiritual enemy, and sometimes those hits are self-inflicted. Here's the good news. Jesus knows all of our demons, even if we don't. So Jesus steps out of the boat and onto the beach, and the demoniac is coming out of the tombs and moving towards him rapidly. And again, I encourage you, listen to this beach. Feel this beach. Taste this moment. Smell this moment. I hear waves behind the boat lapping the shore. And a lot of other things. I'll maybe share some of them in a minute. But we're given a little more of this man's backstory. He's running toward the boat. It says this man lived in the tombs. And no one could bind him anymore. Obviously, it's been tried. Not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. I believe Jesus knew all that man's backstory before he hit that beach. Just as in John 4 when it says Jesus must needs go through Samaria, I believe this day Jesus must needs sail across the Sea of Galilee to the land of the Gadarenes. This man has already experienced a type of hell on earth. He had been bound with chains to protect others from him, to protect others from his violent outbursts, to protect him from himself. But those chains did not hold him. They did not stop him. To quote Ozzy, he's riding off the rails on a crazy train. And it says this, verse 5 is poignant. It's sad. It says, night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. I read that, I hear that, and I see grief. I see lamenting. I see a heart which is inconsolable and in anguish. I see 2020, 2021. Romans 8:22 tells us, we know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to this present time. The world feels it. The world, nature knows the brokenness of our planet, the brokenness of the people who are on it. So we get that backstory, and it tells us, verse 6, when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran. How would you feel if suddenly a crazy person started running toward you? He sees Jesus from a distance. He runs. Now, no one can bind this man. No one can console this man. And yet, the next few verses tell us his eyes see. He sees Jesus from a distance. That reminds me of the prodigal son's father. Same thing. He saw his son from a distance. He sees. His legs run towards Jesus. This guy's coming toward him, and I don't think Jesus flinched. And then it says his knees buckled. He hit his knees. He fell upon his knees. The man is so overwhelmed by the presence of Jesus that he bows in worship even though he is full of demons. Let that sink in. I also thought this, perhaps the demons are using strategy here. If we control this man and have him hit his knees, perhaps the appearance of being religious will trick Jesus into leaving us alone. That's kind of a weak supposition, but possible. But I think what you're seeing here is this man is partly in control of his own facilities, and he's partly not. There's a struggle going on here between him and the demons. So he has this act of worship, though. He hits his knees. It's an act of surrender to the authority and the sovereignty of Jesus standing there on that beach. By appearances, Jesus is outnumbered 1,001 to 1. But appearances are deceiving. This man's eyes see, his legs run, his knees buckle, and then his voice screams. Cried out in a loud voice. He said at the top of his voice, are you ready for this? I'm going to do it. So just preparing your ears here. What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me. It's an odd thing to say. So he knows torture. I'm guessing here that when his fellow citizens had him in chains, they tortured him. They abused him. They taunted him. He knows what this is. And part of why he responds this way, we suddenly learn Jesus has already said something to the man. He said something to the demons, because he's already said, the verse says, he said, come out of this man, you evil spirit. So there's a tug of war going on in this man between him controlling the situation and the things he says, and the spirit in control. Who's in control when he sees, when he runs, when he bows, when he speaks? I think it's a back and forth. So Jesus asked him, said this, he says, what is your name? I am Legion, for we are many. Eugene Peterson's message reads, I am mob, for we are a rioting mob. It says he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. These demons are begging Jesus, don't send us out of the area. The demons are begging Jesus. We like where we are. The land of the Gadarenes is a great vacationing spot. Don't mess with us. Leave us alone. Someone vacates and we take over. That's what demons do. Go to Luke chapter 11. Jesus said so. Jesus said when an evil spirit comes out of a man and it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it, then it says, I will return to the house I left. When it arrives, it finds the house swept clean and put in order. Then it goes and takes 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and live there, and the final condition of that man is worse than the first. So they're begging Jesus, don't run us out of this land. I think Matthew's gospel or Luke's gospel, one of those referred to, don't send us into the abyss. Don't send us to our permanent resting place. Don't do that yet. So they're begging. It says this, it says a large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them. So they begged. There's the second time they're begging. And I've just always thought this is interesting. Verse 13, Jesus gave them permission. They have to wait on his permission, but he gives them permission, and the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. Now, I know a few things about pigs. I once built a pig fence, not a pig pen, a pig fence that kind of covered a hillside mountain there right off the south of Shades Crest Road. I don't know how many acres it encompassed, but it was a 3-day job. Mike Hattaway and I, worked for a farmer for 3 days, and we were paid in a piglet. We both got $20 when we sold it. Here's what I know about pigs. Pigs stink. I remember going to, I was part of FFA in high school, and I remember going to a pig barn. And I remember my coat, whatever winter coat I was wearing, I remember the stench of pigs stayed in that coat for a couple of weeks. I probably should have just given it to my mom and said, would you please wash this? Pigs stink. That's one thing I know about pigs. Here's something else. Pigs are intelligent. According to an article in, of all places, Psychology Today, pigs are intelligent. There are many who believe that pigs are the 4th most intelligent animal on the planet. But hey, we should have already known that. Exhibit A, the Gadarenian pigs. 1,000 demons enter 2,000 pigs. And these placid pigs go hog wild. They're like, oh, can't handle this. We can't deal with this. It says the herd rushed down the steep bank. Lost my place. The herd rushed down the steep bank. There were 2,000 in number. Rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. These pigs want no part of these demons. So they begin to sing, I'll fly away, old Porky. This is when pigs fly. Problem, when pigs fly, they just don't fly far. This is the jokes. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I told cow jokes 2 weeks ago, pork jokes tonight. Pork prices plummeted. Please forgive me. This is the first Bay of Pigs fiasco. The local supply chain was disrupted. The local Gadarenian Walmart had no bacon, so nobody could bring the bacon home. I'll stop. Going back to what they had to go through to get there on that beach, in the Galilee storm, you have a chaotic landscape, seascape, and a calm mind. Jesus spoke calm into the chaos and changed the atmosphere. Now on the Gadarene beach, you have a chaotic mind in a calm landscape. It is the morning after the storm. A storm always cleanses the atmosphere, doesn't it? The air's fresh. Jesus spoke into the chaos of the demoniac's mind because there was still a storm raging within him, and he changed the atmosphere within that man. Verse 15 tells us the man was restored to his right mind. There's only one calm at the center of both storms. There's only one calm at the center of my storm and your storm. This is not cliche. This is not wishful thinking. This is not some kind of imaginary placebo. This is the truth. How do I know it's the truth? Because there have been times when the calm has swept over me in my storm and there was no reason for the calm. I wasn't even leaning into an imaginary placebo. Well, that happens. It's a pretty quick story, actually. It says those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. I can just imagine how the conversation went down back in town. The pig tenders go to the townsfolk and maybe the pig owners, and they say, the pigs are gone. The town folks say, what do you mean the pigs are gone? They got spooked. What do you mean they got spooked? All the demons and the crazy man out there came out of him, went into the herd, and the pigs ran off a cliff and they drowned. What do you mean all the demons and the crazy man came out of him, went into the herd, and the pigs ran off a cliff and they drowned? What do you mean? Pig tender said, Jesus did it. Town folks said, Jesus Christ. Pig tender said, yeah, that guy. He did it. It says when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. They were in awe. Those who had seen it told the people what happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. When the demoniac encountered Jesus, he bowed and then he bellowed. When the townsfolk witnessed what Jesus had done, when they see the man that they knew was a threat to public safety, they see him in his right mind, it says they were awed, and then they became angry. They witnessed a miracle, but it renders them speechless. And then they calculate how much it cost, how much they lost with that pig herd, 2,000 pigs, and they get angry. So they ask Jesus to leave. It says, then they began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. I just want to ask, who are the real madmen in this story? Jesus had taught in Matthew chapter 7, Sermon on the Mount, he said, don't cast your pearls before swine or swine tenders. He didn't say that, but we can include them, lest they trample them under their feet and then turn and rend you to pieces. There's only one cure for the crazy that surrounds us right now and engulfs us, but Jesus won't linger where he is not wanted yet, and he will not stay where he's not invited yet. But you cannot master your demons on your own. I feel like I'm talking to the choir tonight. That's what the demons want you to attempt to do. But you can't. It never works. So this is a mission to save one man. And it says as Jesus was getting back into the boat, he did what he came to do. This one man had this encounter with one man, cast the demons out of this one man. He's getting back in the boat, and the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. There's a lot of begging and pleading in this story. The demons begged, townsfolk pleaded, now he's begging. And I have to say, I don't blame him. Because if the demons wanted to stay in the area and the citizens wanted Jesus to leave, that says something about that place. And yet Jesus tells this man, no. Jesus did not let him. For just a moment, I wonder, as the man was in his right mind, I wonder if he thought, oh, wait a minute, you said yes to the demons, and all they wanted to do was destroy. You said yes to the townspeople. All they wanted for you to do is bug off. But you're saying no to me, and all I want to do is follow you? Jesus explains, he says, this is how you can follow me. Go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. As if to say, yes, this is a place where demons want to stay, and yes, this is a place where people want me to leave, and yes, that says something about this place, and here's what it says. It says this is the type of place that needs a light in the darkness. And I want you to be that light. The last verse says, so the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis, that's the 10 cities, how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. And when Jesus returns to the land of the Decapolis 2 chapters later, evidently this man has done a wonderful job because he received an entirely different welcome when he came back into the region. Only a crazy Jesus can save our crazy world. Has your crazy broken met crazy Jesus? All right.